Hello, and thanks again for joining our podcast series, A Day in the Life of an Ethical Hacker. Hosted by Synack's Tice Harrison, this series deep dives into the minds of our Synack Red Team members. They tell us why they chose this line of work, what they do when they're not finding vulnerabilities, and give us a glimpse into their everyday lives. Today's interview is with Johnny Villarreal. Johnny spent 6 years in the Army Reserves as a Signals Intelligence Analyst, teaches cybersecurity at UC Irvine, and works as an information security manager and individual project contributor for Mitre. He lives in Southern California and has been working with Synack for 1.5 years. Before we get started, for those new listeners not familiar with Synack, founded in 2013 by former NSA security experts Jay Kaplan and Dr. Mark Kerr, Synack is the most trusted crowdsourced security platform, delivering comprehensive and continuous penetration testing. Synack combines the world's most skilled and trusted ethical hackers with AI-enabled technology to create a scalable, effective security solution. Headquartered in Silicon Valley with regional offices around the world, Synack protects leading global banks, federal agencies, DoD classified assets, and close to $1 trillion in Fortune 500 revenue. We hope you enjoyed this interview. Now, once again, over to you, Tice.
Thanks, Michelle, and welcome, Johnny. Great to have you on the podcast this week. As usual, we'll try and keep it pretty informal. We've met very briefly beforehand, and you and I have spoken just about sort of what you want to get across. Maybe it's nice to start off with a little introduction as to where you're from, your background, what you studied, and a little bit about your day job.
Sure. Thanks for having me. I'm super stoked to be here. So I'm from Garden Grove, California. Just a small town, Southern California, about, I don't know, maybe 15 or so minutes away from Disneyland. My day job's pretty, I don't know, it's, your typical cybersecurity job. I run an information security program out there for a site in LA. But aside from that, I do teach cybersecurity at UC Irvine. I just wrapped up my latest class in March. And I'm planning to go back probably around August or so, depending on, how this shutdown and stuff turns out.
Yeah. And have you noticed, actually touching on that, have you noticed a big strain on or a change in the work that you've been doing with Synack since the outbreak?
I've noticed an increase. I mean, since we're all stuck at home, it's actually pretty awesome because, the crisis itself isn't awesome, but being at home, not having a commute,
yeah,
I could dedicate more time to research and training and, trying to make my contributions to the Red Team.
Johnny, I know you do a lot for the security community. What kind of things do you do in your spare time with this in mind?
Well, aside from raising my chickens, community-wise, there's definitely a lot going on. I have a Slack channel that I volunteer, once a week or once every 2 weeks, do walkthroughs of hack the box machines. I give reverse engineering classes, basic exploit development. I've done offensive security workshops for Cal State Fullerton, Long Beach City College. There's one I'm planning to do in Northridge after this shutdown ends. One of my friends, Malia, she runs a organization called Women in Cybersecurity, WESIS. They're amazing. Essentially a group dedicated to help promote more women in the workforce. I do a lot of workshops for them as well. And aside from that, I try to volunteer at conferences wherever I can.
And is that something that you're finding is easy to manage between sort of work and your time on the SRT? Is that something you've had to adapt to?
Oh, yeah. I think the best part about being SRT is the fact that you manage your own schedule, you manage your own time. If you want to take a break, you could take a break. But at the end of the day, you are rewarded for as hard as you work. So, you just you manage your own schedule, and it's probably one of the better things.
Yeah, flexible hours is always handy. Actually, how did you get into cybersecurity, and how did you get into ethical hacking with Synack?
It's a super long story, but the bottom line up front is I actually started my career at Mitre an IT position, and I received an invite to go to DEF CON. And at the time, I had no idea really what ethical hacking was. I only knew about what I learned from, basic certs like Security Plus and whatnot. So when I saw my first talk at DEF CON and I picked my first lock at Lockpicking Village, it turned me onto the offensive side of security. And so I made it my personal goal, an objective to obtain my OSCP. And that's when I had first heard about Synack, was at I think it was DEF CON. And I just remember thinking to myself, as soon as I grind through and hopefully earn this OSCP, like the first thing I'm going to do is, practice and audition for Synack. And that pretty much just drove itself for almost 2 years.
Nice. So it was sort of the end goal was actually to be on the platform, be, researching as an SRT member. And how soon after you got the qualification did you start with Synack?
I think I over-prepared myself for the cert because I nailed it in about 4 hours instead of
nice.
full 24. So it was really like 2 or 3 months.
Yeah. And
I had trained even during like the most random times. I was part of the National Guard. I ended up battling car fire up in Redding, California. It was a huge wildfire a few years ago, and I even brought my laptop out there so I could study like before bed and whatnot. So there's a lot of training. I mean, you're talking months. Putting
in those hours whenever you could. Kind of like a book that you can't stop reading, right?
Yep.
And has that also, so over the last, you've been with Synack now for just under 2 years, is that something that you're constantly teaching yourself and updating as you go along? Sort of refining, fine-tuning your tool set and also your knowledge and trying new things? Absolutely.
These companies are, always coming out with new applications. Technologies are always changing. So you just, if you truly love what you do and you want to obviously make money, but, learn new things, it's the perfect career field, because if you don't learn new things, you kind of fall behind.
Yeah. And actually on that, one question that we get asked quite a lot, and one which we've got asked for you is, what motivates you to do ethical hacking? What keeps you going, and has that changed since you started at Synack?
Yeah, it has. Originally, I just wanted to be on, the offensive side of security because of how cool I thought it was.
Yeah.
It pretty much scrapped most of what I thought I knew about cybersecurity. People tell you, just use a firewall. You just go through the firewall using well-known ports, etc. But I think what motivates me now is a community, because when you meet other ethical hackers, which is a rare thing, and Synack has actually been the primary means of meeting other hackers and other people who are interested in doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
It's motivating to compete with them in some sense. It's friendly competition, but at the end of the day, it really still is competition.
Yeah, and so when you said that Synack is one of the sort of main ways that you do have contact with other ethical hackers, has that changed as well since you started? I know that actually when we spoke briefly before, that was a big part for you, is having that dialogue with other people in the same position, and also having that nice balance between having friendships and also forming new colleagues, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't think of a better time than HACR Hangouts, DEF CON, just meeting other SRT in real life. It's almost like meeting your Xbox buddies who live in other states and countries. Yeah. And it's like, holy cow, like, wow, I didn't think you'd look like that, but dude, like, awesome, like, cool to see you, cool to meet you in person,
Yeah, kind of like a sort of friendly idolization from afar.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like you find out, oh shoot, my best buddy looks like Gandalf, like, I need to grow my beard even further now.
Yeah. Oh, he has that cool hoodie. I also want that Synack hoodie, right?
Yeah.
And so is there, you probably noticed this when you were at the HAC Hangouts and when you meet the other people in the Synack community, the Red Team community, everyone has their own little things that they need in their setup to sort of start the day or to start their process. So is there anything in particular that you need? Do you need coffee? Do you need a certain type of biscuit? What do you need for your setup to start going for it?
Caffeine for sure. I couldn't survive without it. This might sound kind of weird, but like pumpkin pie.
Pumpkin pie. Wow, I have not heard that one before.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what it is. It just puts me in a good mood.
I'm not sure I've even tried that. Is that something which is specific to where you live, or?
No, it's I don't know. I like dessert for breakfast.
Nice. And in terms of sort of habits, so do you set up a certain amount of automation to your work?
I have a workflow. I'm not fully automated because of false positives.
Yep.
But a lot of my recon and stuff is definitely automated. I think when it comes to actual exploitation, I find that even my best tools will sometimes overlook some gold.
Yeah.
So, generally speaking, I have certain things I look for. After post recon, if you're finding web servers and you're finding, especially web applications, there's certain things that you're just really good at that you just can't automate because tools can really screw it up for you sometimes. But for the most part, recon's definitely automated.
Yeah. And so with that in mind, is there a specific type of testing that you prefer doing?
Host.
Web, mobile? Host?
Mainly host and web.
Okay. Why is that?
Host just reminds me of it reminds me like a real life version of Hack the Box, except much harder.
Mm-hmm.
And I personally enjoy CTFs. I mean, I enjoy web applications, but occasionally it's nice to poke at other applications that aren't just web-based,
Yeah, and with that in mind, do you prefer continuous testing, or do you prefer sort of 2-week sprints?
Definitely 2-week sprints, just because there's always that fresh factor to it. But at the same time, I think it's more rewarding when you find a target. You find a really, really nasty vulnerability on, a much more aged target, if you will, something that we've already gone over, hit really hard, something that's already hardened. I mean, it's personally a lot more rewarding when you find something on one of those guys, because nobody else does, and it's just like, holy cow, that was there in front of us the whole time. And we talk about it amongst ourselves. I mean, it's just something we do.
And do you have a preferred technology stack that you like to target?
No, not really. I've got things for just about every stack you could think of.
You're ready for whatever?
Mostly. I mean, there's also the days you're just not finding anything, you're striking out.
Yeah. And so do you then compete with with the rest of the community for leaderboard status, or just to get the sort of vulnerability in quickest? How do you find that that works for you?
I don't really compete for leaderboards. There's some guys out there that would definitely destroy me if we competed, because they've been doing this thing for 20, 30 years. So, I mean, my hat goes off to those guys. I look up to them, and I train to beat them someday.
Yeah, and that's something that still motivates you then?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's like motivation in its purest form.
And so I know that you enjoy the HAC Hangouts. What's the best part of that setup?
I would say, I mean, just seeing everybody. That's like the most rewarding part. I mean, I remember our Hacker Hangout in Austin. I showed up there. I actually showed up there with my sister. She's also SRT. It was like super quiet. Everybody was kind of just on their laptops. And I remember the first thing I saw was they had a kegerator of electric jellyfish, which is like this amazing IPA. And within like an hour, it went from like a library to like a beer pong tournament.
Okay, that sounds fun.
Oh, it was fun. Those guys they're a blast.
And so your sister, did you say, is also an SRT member?
Correct.
Okay, and who got into it first?
I did. You
did, and then did you, did you tell her about it, and then she was interested, or it was something you were both interested, you just got through first?
I told her about it, but I mean, she's self-motivated, so before you know it, she was chasing her OSCP and whatnot. It was just a matter of time. We're competitive like that.
Okay, and so that's interesting that you also have competitive aspect there. And so with your sort of the way that you've progressed, is there something which you would advise other people wanting to get into ethical hacking on the on Synack platform that you would advise?
Yeah, stay self-motivated. Don't worry about what other people say. You don't need a master's degree or a PhD to be a hacker. In fact, you don't. The only thing you need is self-motivation, a pretty solid will, and the ability to Google the hell out of everything.
Yeah, and definitely perseverance. And is there something sort of, what do you think is the best part about the job?
I would say just knowing that you're making the world a safer placer as an adversary, but a good adversary. It's not one of those jobs where you're helping security by looking at it from a, it's just different when you're adversary, adversarial emulation. It's different when you're the one actually compromising servers to show them, the importance of good cyber hygiene. Because I do the same thing in a blue team sense with Mitre. When I get to do this as an SRT, it's just entirely different. It's one thing to tell somebody, hey, protect your stuff, protect your assets. And it's another thing to show them why. I think that's the most rewarding part. So kind of having both hats definitely is a rewarding experience. I think that's the best part, in my opinion.
And in terms of the companies that you're helping to protect, is there sort of a sense of a sense of satisfaction from knowing that you're helping possibly companies that you have used their apps, or you've actually been in contact with before being a security researcher?
Absolutely. I mean, especially when you run into the ones where you strike out, you kind of sleep better at night thinking, okay, if I couldn't get this thing, I'm sure there's some whack job out there who's got a 0-day for something they have, but at least, the script kiddies can't get to it. You sleep a little safer at night for sure.
And say that you're searching for quite a while, you're not finding anything. Do you take breaks to sort of let yourself recharge and then go back to it afterwards?
Yeah. My breaks are kind of weird. My breaks are training.
Okay.
So when I strike out of frustration, I'll start training like crazy and other stuff just to get my mind off of it, because hacking is like completely taken over gaming for me. I used to be a huge gamer, and like now my version of quality time is hopping on a terminal.
Yeah.
But it's super important to take breaks. Otherwise, you're just going to burn yourself out.
Yeah, and I guess also having that community is the sort of more of a community vibe in Synack is quite nice, that you can chat to other people in a similar position who might be struggling to find stuff, and just having a bit of banter with them, I guess, is quite nice as a distraction.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, they've always got, you might always run into somebody who's been in your particular scenario before, and you might find that, you're so tunnel visioned into your problem that the fix is something super simple. So, having them around is super helpful.
I mean, I thought it was quite amazing when at the end of last week, we had a quick conversation, and you were actually in quarantine with another of our SRT members, just by coincidence.
Yeah. One of my buddies I met at DEF CON, and we're, for a while, we're just like, hey, like, you always tell your friends, oh yeah, come visit me, blah, blah, blah. And they always say, oh yeah, I'll come visit you. And then they don't, because, it's expensive to fly. But I mean, that's kind of one of the cool perks of being SRT is, you're making some extra cash on the side. So if you want to go visit your buddy, and make money while you're out there, you can.
Yeah, so why not?
That happened to be what happened. And then of course, the whole COVID-19 shutdown happened here in California. So yeah, we're pretty much stuck here.
I mean, there's worse places to be stuck, right?
What's that?
There's worse places to be stuck than with your friend, for sure, doing something you enjoy doing. Sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
And do you guys compete with each other? Oh
yeah, we compete. We share. I mean, it's an interesting sort of ordeal amongst SRT. It's like it's friendly competition, but at the same time, like you're always willing to lend a hand if it's not going to be completely devastating your competitive advantage.
Yeah. And so in terms of helping each other out, who's the cook?
That's the funniest thing is, like, we have completely different upbringings in ethical hacking. I mean, we've all taken different courses. We've all done a lot of different types of assessments, and we do different types of work. But there's these weird times where you're stuck, like you're up against a brick wall, and your buddy might have just the perfect, technique or whatever breakthrough, and you're just like, where the hell did that come from? We've had a lot of those. We've had a lot of those in the last few weeks, which is the most interesting part. So I don't think it's measurable to say one's better than the other, but I mean, for sure, like, there are some talented individuals on the team.
Yeah, and
this guy's definitely one of them.
And Johnny, do you use LaunchPoint Plus? And if so, what do you most like about working on it?
I do use LaunchPoint Plus. I'll say it's one of my favorite pieces of the platform, simply because it's a dedicated system you're allowed to use for testing that's direct connected to the VPN at all times. So I started off using a Kali VM, and I would just use my LaunchPoint VPN from there. And it was, good and bad. You had all the tools on Kali, and then we got, access to LaunchPoint Plus, which was a Red Hat system, and I was using Kali, so to port all the tools and stuff over was quite interesting. But once you had your setup, it's just absolutely amazing.
And how does this compare to using your own system?
I would say awesome, because I don't have to use my own system. It's dedicated.
Yeah.
Speed and performance-wise, it's way faster. I would say just getting all your applications set up the first time sucked, because you're going from Kali to a Red Hat flavor. It's just totally different. The packages are a lot different, but it's definitely worth the setup. And you kind of just have to use your sysadmin and research skills to figure that piece out.
And once you have it set up, is that something which allows more automation in your work and more of a sort of fixed workflow?
Oh, yeah. Everything's already set up. I can access it from any of my systems because it's, hosted in the cloud. I could even log in on my phone and run an Nmap scan. It's pretty awesome.
And so those are the benefits for you. And what are the benefits for, the targets that you're working on for them? What's the benefits from their perspective for you using LaunchPoint Plus?
Site-to-site engagements. I would say there's also less risk of your VPN just disconnecting in the middle of an assessment. That's been really nice. I think overall it's just a nicer, more contained type of testing, in my opinion.
Is there just sort of an interesting question I had is what would you say to a CISO or someone who's, apprehensive about engaging with Synack, and letting ethical hackers inside their network?
I think that you should definitely engage. This is one of the few testing opportunities where you're really going to find some unique vulnerabilities that are specific to your platform.
Yep.
Oftentimes I see a lot of organizations who are okay with just a Nessus scan quarterly or whatever to meet compliance. But there's the dark, nasty vulnerabilities that exist from things that traditional security means cannot find. And SRT will find them.
Yeah, I mean, if
and
you
so
don't,
will the bad guys.
Yeah, exactly. And so you see definite value in having, both automation, machine technology and human as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so have you ever come across, any problems with your work at Mitre and their understanding of ethical hacking? Have you ever had sort of that conflict, or do you just keep the two separate?
No, I keep them pretty separate. Mitre's got a pretty amazing understanding of ethical hacking and adversary emulation. But yeah, it's one of the things where to avoid conflict of interest, I simply just keep the two separate.
Yep. And I guess as you're sort of working from home, as everyone is now, it's just about managing that difference in job work, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, I have my commitments, and it's easy to not let the two cross because I just set time boundaries. So I pull my 8 or 9 or however many hours it takes to put out all the fires at one, and then I hop on to go take care of my testing with SRT. But for me, testing isn't just a job; it's also an escape because it's just different type of work that I thoroughly enjoy. So I get to do that every day, and it's awesome.
And when you're in the zone, you just go for it, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so would you definitely recommend it to others, maybe younger listeners or people who are wanting to pick up a new skill to try and get into it? Would you recommend getting into ethical hacking, and where would you say for them to start?
I would definitely make a recommendation. You absolutely should. If it's something that's always interested you, if you're a gamer who loves modding, whatever the case is, if you like tinkering with things and helping people, ultimately you're gonna have to follow some rules. But I would say start with a lot of the free resources. Go do Hack the Box. Go do pen tester labs. Go research. There's so many free resources out there before you have to jump to something like a certification. A lot of us come from backgrounds where we're not made of money. We don't have companies that pay for every type of training there is. I was fortunate to have a lot of my certs paid for. I had OSCP paid for and stuff by Mitre. But I've taught dozens of students who didn't have jobs, didn't have all those resources, and they went from, writing Hello World in Python to compromising active Hack the Box machines.
Yeah.
And the requirement was putting in time and effort. So every Saturday we'd be on Hack the Box. We'd also do virtual walkthroughs, all kinds of stuff. But you have to just keep poking, prodding at it, even if you feel like you don't know what you're doing at the moment. After enough time put in, it will start to clarify, will start to make sense, and you're going to have a lot of breakthrough moments. But you pretty much have to embrace the suck at the start for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's really nice that you also volunteer and host various offensive security workshops. It's really, really interesting to hear your story, and I really have enjoyed it. Is there anything else you would like to add before we end?
No, just stay motivated. Stay motivated, work hard, try harder.
Yeah, try harder and keep going.
That's my favorite one. Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks, Johnny. That was actually really, really interesting. I've enjoyed speaking with you this time, and hopefully we can get a chance to do this again in the future. Also really fun for us to build a better picture of our, Synack Red Team members, hear it from your perspective. And yeah, just keep doing the great stuff that you are.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Thanks. Listeners, hope you enjoyed the episode as much as we've enjoyed having you, and then we'll catch you in the next one.